Every single night, you close your eyes, you drift off, and suddenly you're flying over a mountain range, perfectly lucid. Or maybe you're stuck in an exam you definitely didn't study for, desperately looking for your clothes. Dreams are this powerful, universal, nightly experience, and yet they're still one of the last great mysteries of consciousness.
They absolutely are. And what's astonishing, really, is the sheer scale of it all compared to how little we actually, capture. You might not realize it, but you typically dream about 4 to 6 times every single night.
4 to 6 times. That's like a whole film festival happening inside our head while we sleep.
Precisely. And here's the cruel irony. We forget more than 95% of all of those dreams, just gone. So our mission today is to dive past all the simple pop psych interpretations. We really need to integrate what the dream feels like, that's the phenomenology, with the hard science of what the brain is actually doing, the
We're
neurophysiology.
in the story to the science.
Exactly.
And what we know right off the bat is that the content isn't just random chaos, right? Research gives us this crucial insight. Something like 65% of what's in your dreams is directly tied to experiences from your waking life.
Right. The brain is actively sorting through what some people call the day's residue. If you're dealing with, huge deadlines at work, it's not a surprise when you dream you're back at your desk. If you're anxious about a big life change, that worry is just, it's going to find its way into your dream world.
So let's start with the basics then, the phenomenology. What does a standard dream actually look and feel like?
Well, they are overwhelmingly visual. Images are absolutely front and center, creating this vivid, almost cinematic experience. Smell or touch can be there, sure, but they're definitely secondary. And most people, contrary to some of the old myths, they dream in full color, though a small percentage still report dreaming only in black and white.
That makes sense. We know our mood during the day affects everything, but how direct is the link between our mood and our dreams?
Oh, it's a very, very clear link. The less stressed you are in real life, the more pleasant your dreams tend to be. And on the flip side, chronic high stress can quickly push you into the territory of disturbing dreams.
Which brings us to nightmares.
Exactly.
Nightmares. So these are those scary dreams that usually hit during REM sleep when the brain is super active.
Yeah.
What are the common triggers besides just general stress?
The triggers can be surprisingly mundane, eating spicy food right before bed, sleep deprivation, even certain medications. But the link to emotional trauma and anxiety it's undeniable. If someone has an anxiety disorder or PTSD, they're highly susceptible. We see up to 71% of PTSD sufferers experience recurring nightmares.
71%? Wow, that's a staggering link. It really shows how the dream state is where our deepest emotional wounds are often re-experienced. And researchers have found the 3 most common nightmare themes that we all seem to share, right?
Yes, these primal fears, death or dying, physical violence, and being chased or hunted.
Now, you have to make a distinction here that I think trips a lot of people up. The difference between a nightmare and a night terror.
Oh, absolutely. This is a vital distinction.
Right, the night terror. That's the really dramatic, terrifying thing that parents sometimes see in their kids.
Exactly. Nightmares are stories, they're narrative, they happen in REM sleep, you generally remember them. Night terrors, on the other hand, are not dreams. They're a sleep disorder. They happen during deep, non-REM sleep, so earlier in the night, and the person almost never remembers what happened.
So someone having a night terror might, scream, kick, sweat, look completely terrified? But if you ask them what they were dreaming about, they've got nothing.
They've got nothing. It's a blank. It's a physical, messy awakening from the deepest stage of sleep, not a psychological story like a nightmare.
Okay, so let's shift to a much more empowering state, lucid dreams. This is where you actually become aware that you're dreaming while it's happening. You think, wait a minute, I'm flying. I'm definitely in bed.
It's a remarkable state. It's like a tiny sliver of your waking consciousness just breaks through. And the stats are pretty surprising. 55% of people say they've experienced this at least once. And crucially, it's not just some kind of party trick.
So how can it be used clinically?
Well, because you gain a sense of control, the practice of lucid dreaming has become really useful for people struggling with recurring nightmares. If you can become lucid inside the nightmare, you can actually confront whatever is chasing you, or you can just change the scene entirely. You rewrite the script.
We also spend a lot of our waking hours in these mental wanderings, daydreams. Are they just like low-intensity dreams?
They're related, for sure, but they have this fascinating predictive power. Studies show that the content of your daydreams is highly correlated with your well-being. If you find yourself daydreaming a lot about people you know, friends, family, that often predicts positive well-being.
But what if you're frequently lost in thought about, I don't know, strangers, people you've never met?
That might actually be a bit of a warning sign. Daydreaming about unfamiliar people has been linked in some research to indicators of loneliness. It's like your brain is searching for a connection that it's not finding in your real life.
That makes me think about repetition. Why do some dreams feel like a rerun? The dreaded recurring dream.
Repetition in a dream usually means your brain is banging on the door about something. It could be signaling an unresolved conflict, a chronic anxiety, or even a physiological issue. The common themes, being chased, falling, being frozen with fear, they're all about powerlessness or escape. It's a deep tension your waking mind hasn't solved.
And before we get into the mechanics, let's touch on those famous universal metaphors. Everyone's dreamt of falling or their teeth falling out. What's the brain trying to process with those images?
Absolutely. So take the teeth falling out dream, it's everywhere. Interpretation-wise, it's often linked to feeling powerless, embarrassed, worrying about a major loss. But why that specific image?
Because losing your teeth is so visceral and permanent.
Exactly. It's a powerful metaphor for a complete lack of control. Or think about being naked in public, another classic. This symbolizes this profound fear of judgment, of being exposed and vulnerable.
And that fear of social embarrassment is exactly what our logical, critical brain is supposed to manage when we're awake.
That's the key. The dream uses these absurdly dramatic metaphors because the part of your brain that usually manages your social image, that critiques your logic, it's shut down. And without that self-censorship, the raw fear just manifests as this literal image of exposure.
That's a perfect pivot. We've talked about how bizarre and emotional these stories are. So now let's find out how the brain actually builds the stage for this performance.
Well, when we're dreaming, the brain is pulling off this incredible feat. It's generating an entire internal world of conscious experience completely cut off from the outside world.
The traditional view, for decades, was that REM sleep was basically dream central, because the brain activity looked a lot like it does when we're awake.
Right. But that initial equation, REM equals dreaming, we now know that's a huge oversimplification. While REM dreams are definitely the most vivid and memorable, we know that full-blown, complex dreams can and do happen during late NREM sleep. Studies show 10 to 30% of NREM dream reports are basically indistinguishable from REM dreams.
Okay, so if it's not just REM, what is the neural signature during that vivid REM phase? I mean, which parts are firing up to build the world and which ones are, clocked out, leading to all the weirdness?
We see this very specific, very asymmetrical pattern. The parts building the dream, the emotional and visual core, are hyperactivated. We're talking about the high-order visual cortex, the occipitotemporal areas. That's what drives the vivid imagery. And critically, limbic structures like the amygdala and hippocampus are also intensely active. That's where the intense emotion and memory fragments come from.
Wait, so if the hippocampus, our memory center, is so active, why isn't the dream story more organized? Why is it so chaotic?
That is the paradox, isn't it? And the answer is in what's deactivated. The logical centers are hypoactive. They're running on low power. This is your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, your orbitofrontal cortex, the parts responsible for critical thinking, planning, self-monitoring.
So when I dream that I can suddenly fly, and I just accept it, it's because the brain region that would normally go, hold on, that's impossible, is literally powered down.
Precisely. That deactivation explains the lack of voluntary control, the reduced self-awareness, and why we just accept all the logical inconsistencies without question. The critical editor is asleep on the job.
And we can even see this in lesion studies, right, when these areas are damaged.
Yes, exactly. Damage near the temporoparieto-occipital junction, the TPO junction, often causes a global end to dreaming. It strongly implies that dreaming depends on these forebrain regions that support our ability to create visuospatial mental images. Knock out that ability, and the inner movie screen just goes dark.
Okay, so this brings us to the central debate in dream science. Is this world built from the bottom up, starting with random signals, or from the top down, starting with thoughts? In other words, are dreams perception, or are they imagination?
Right. The bottom-up models suggest the brainstem sends up random signals, and the cortex just tries its best to weave them into a story, like it's perceiving something, but the input is internal.
But the top-down theories argue that dreams are actually a very sophisticated form of imagination. Abstract thoughts and emotions get turned into sensory, visual experiences.
And the evidence really, really favors the imagination, the top-down approach. We already mentioned the lesion studies linking the loss of dreaming to the loss of visuospatial ability while awake.
What's the developmental evidence for that?
It's incredibly compelling. Research shows that a child's ability to have rich, narrative dreams develops very gradually. It perfectly parallels their waking cognitive development, specifically their skill with mental imagery. So the richness of their dreams correlates beautifully with how well they do on things like the block design test, which measures those visuospatial skills.
So the ability to dream complex stories is basically just an extension of our ability to imagine complex stories while we're awake.
Exactly. And one final piece of evidence is how hard it is to focus on fine detail in dreams, even when you're lucid. If you try to read a sign or look closely at a face, it often gets blurry or shifts, which is exactly what happens when we try to focus on tiny details in our waking imagination.
So if the brain is so active in creating these vivid hallucinations, why are we so disconnected from the real world? If a fire alarm went off, why wouldn't it just become a huge fire in the dream?
This deep disconnection seems to link back to the brain's chemical environment during REM sleep. Key neuromodulatory systems, norepinephrine, serotonin, and critically histamine, are way down or basically silent during REM. The hypothesis is that you need histamine, which is high when we're awake, for the brain to integrate external stuff into our consciousness. Without it, the outside world is blocked.
Okay, so we have this complex simulation running every night, but then we hit the wall of dream amnesia. Why is the story lost the moment we wake up, even though the hippocampus, our memory engine, was so active?
This is probably the biggest paradox of all. One theory is that it's the radical state change itself. The sudden flood of those chemicals when we wake up just wipes the slate clean. Another model suggests dreams are forgotten because they're just internal narratives. They don't have any external cues or context to anchor them in our memory.
But sometimes the dream pulls up a little piece of conversation from what already days ago. What's the dream lag effect?
The dream lag effect is fascinating. It shows that significant recent experiences might take about a week to get fully encoded into long-term memory. And during that consolidation period, images or bits of content related to that event are really likely to pop up in our REM dreams as the brain is actively working to file them away.
So who are the people who seem to be better at remembering these nightly shows?
It's often linked to states of heightened flux, either physiologically or psychologically. People under severe stress, anxiety, or trauma recall more as their brain is just constantly in overdrive. We also see pregnant individuals reporting much more frequent and vivid dreams. That's likely due to hormonal shifts and changes in their sleep patterns.
And what about grief?
Research has consistently shown that people who are grieving often have dreams that aren't just more vivid, but feel profoundly meaningful. It seems to be a crucial way the brain processes bereavement, sometimes letting the lost person appear in the dream in a way that feels very real and helpful.
So if you're listening and you want to capture more of that 95%, what are the practical steps experts recommend for getting better at recall?
Okay, 4 key steps. First, and this is the most important, think about the dream immediately when you wake up, before you even move. Movement seems to just shatter the memory. Second, keep a dream journal or a recording app right by your bed. You have to get the details down instantly.
And the third step is about how we wake up.
Yes. Try to wake up peacefully. A loud, abrupt alarm just yanks you out of that delicate dream state and can erase everything. A gentler transition is much better.
And the final piece of advice is just about basic sleep hygiene.
Exactly. Maintain a consistent sleep schedule. That ensures you get enough REM time, especially in the last few hours of the night. If you cut your sleep short, you're disproportionately cutting off your richest and longest dreams.
We've covered the whole journey, from the bizarre logic of being naked in public to the neural dance of the prefrontal cortex shutting down. Dreams really are this sophisticated, powerful product of the brain's internal activity, acting as this nightly simulation that helps with emotional processing and memory.
And if we connect this back to the big picture, it raises a really important question for you to think about. If dreaming is our purest, most unfiltered form of imagination, a time when our logical circuits are off, and imagination is key to solving abstract problems, is the very illogic of the dreaming brain actually a required state? Is it necessary for generating creative solutions that our critical waking self just can't get to?
That is a powerful thought. The next time you find yourself flying or your car starts talking, maybe consider that the absurdity itself might be the engine your brain needed. He could be generating a creative insight or processing a deep conflict you weren't even aware of. maybe it's time to treat those recurring themes not as random noise, but as important messages from your imaginative subconscious.